Nintendo messed up so bad with the high price of the Switch 2 that some retailers are already trying to walk back the price to something that's a little bit more reasonable. And no, I am not kidding. This almost seems like they are desperate to just move as many units as possible. In fact, I reported here on the channel that a credible leak suggested that one retailer would be permanently lowering the price of the Switch 2, and now just 2 weeks later the dominoes are already starting to fall. So today we're going to do a deep dive on why the Nintendo Switch 2 price has already officially started to decrease in some markets, and then later in the video we're actually going to go over what one analyst thinks Nintendo's strategy is going to have to be moving forward, and honestly it was pretty eye-opening. But first, what's going on, guys? Cheers. By the way, really quick, I got a notification on my phone the other day that you guys hyped one of my videos to be like in the top 25 in the entire United States the other day, which is actually mind-blowing. So thank you to everyone who's been using that feature and liking the videos. It really helps out tiny channels like this a ton. Now, in case you guys missed it, I reported on the channel 2 weeks ago that there was a credible leak that the Switch 2 was getting a permanent price reduction in one region in Europe, and there's been a big update to that story, which we'll talk about in a second. Let me catch you guys up to speed really quick, because this is a website called Deal Labs, and as you can see, shows the Nintendo Switch 2 Pokemon Legends ZA bundle for 469 euros. Now, if you guys are familiar with the launch price of the Switch 2 in France, you'll know that the Switch 2 bundles launched at 499 euros, which by the way is $583. So it is more expensive to buy a Switch 2 in France than it is here in the United States with a bundle. Now, the reason that this leak was making the rounds is because the individual that actually leaked it has been a member of this community since 2016. They've also been responsible for other leaks in the past, such as the upcoming PlayStation Game of the Month titles, and so a lot of people see this user Bill as a reputable source for leaks like this when it comes to deals, especially in Europe. And by the way, he also leaked something else about the Switch 2 that we'll talk about later in the video, but obviously with his track record, I am inclined to believe that that leak is probably real as well, so we'll touch on that later. But anyway, basically the leak said that the Switch 2 would be getting a permanent price reduction at a retailer in France called Leclerc, and it was supposed to drop around October 14th 2025. However, the deal actually started on October 9th, so they actually moved this up a little bit. This actually went into effect faster than we actually anticipated. I wonder if that means anything. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then of course, you know, today is the release date of Pokemon Legends ZA, and so if we go ahead and take a look at Leclerc, what we can find out now is that not only is this deal real and it is permanent and it went into effect sooner than we thought, there's even more to the story. Okay, but actually what we can see here is that the original leak said that the bundle would be 469, right, instead of 499, but on Leclerc's website it shows that the bundle price is 454. So again, if we come in here, 454, that is $530. So still more expensive than it is here in the USA, but it's still less than even the leak. So remember, we started at 499, then the leak said 469, now it's showing 454. Now, of course, I don't live in France, so I can't go to the store and actually check this, but if you guys live in France, let me know in the comment section below if you've seen this. But here's where the story gets even weirder, okay, because if we take a look at Nintendo Life, they actually posted an update a couple of days ago that they reported on the same leak that I talked about even before then. But what's even more interesting is that they revealed that not only were the bundles getting a discount to 469, which as we can see is actually lower, but they also revealed that not only were the bundles getting a discount, but the actual base model was getting a discount as well. So this wasn't some sort of like attempt at like upselling you to get the more expensive bundle. Even if you didn't want the game, maybe you would just go for it just to get a good deal or something like that. No, they also lowered the price of the actual Switch 2 itself. And then around the same time that this news came out, more news came out that Amazon was doing the exact same thing in France. And so this is the first domino that has started to fall. right? Because one of the narratives that a lot of people were spreading when this story first leaked and I first talked about it 2 weeks ago, a lot of people were saying like, oh, well, you know, the French market, it's just hyper competitive, and so, you know, some retailers have to use these as loss leaders, and that might be true, right? And we will talk about that later in the video, but people very much thought that this was just an E. Leclerc thing, and it was just, oh, they're doing some crazy stuff, right? They're just doing something weird to get people in the door. And it's like, no, actually Amazon also has no problem lowering the price in France as well. Now look, one retailer doing this is an anomaly. Two retailers doing this, especially one as big as Amazon, is the beginning of a trend. And as you'll see, the dominoes have started to fall here, folks, because this is, and I'm so sorry, I don't speak French, but this is Carrefour. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I have no idea. I'm just a goofball here on the internet. I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, as you can see here, this is another French retailer, and they have listed the Nintendo Switch 2 console for, once again, $419. So here you can see that they have also price matched the exact same price as the other retailers, E. Leclerc and Amazon. But wait a minute. Here we got another one, Idealo. Here we have, I don't know what Idealo is, but here you can see the Nintendo Switch 2 is once again $418, even lower. They undercut them by another euro. They said, we'll do you even better. We'll go even lower than that, right? Is this a race to the bottom? And again, here you can see the Mario Kart World Bundle is $454. So wait a minute, hold on. The Mario Kart World Bundle, Nintendo said specifically when the Mario Kart World Bundle came out that it was for limited time only, and they still have Mario Kart World bundles in France at Idealo. Clearly they're trying to get rid of them because they lowered the price even more. Remember, it was supposed to be $469. Now it's $459 for the Legends EA bundle, which came out today, by the way, and then it's $454 for the Mario Kart World bundle. It seems like the French market is like slowly racing to the bottom here, and the price is just getting ground down as much as possible. Like, it begs the question, like, are they even making money off of the Switch 2 anymore? I guess they must be making a little bit of money, right? So let's try to figure out what exactly happened here. Okay, the first thing that might come to mind is maybe the Switch 2 didn't sell well in France, right? I mean, that's totally possible. If the price was so high at launch and it didn't sell particularly well, then it would make sense that the retailers have all of this inventory that they just have to get rid of, and so they can't get rid of it, they just start lowering the price, right? Well, at launch it was reported that in France the Switch 2 sold 169,000 units. The previous record for a console launch was the PS5 with 107,000. So it absolutely, according to this, and I don't know, I mean, there's no source here. I guess maybe it's in the replies or something, I'm not exactly sure, but maybe the source is trust me bro, I don't know, but they've got a chart, so I mean it must be legit, right? I mean, like, come on now. But let's take this at face value. Let's assume that this is accurate. Okay, it would stand to reason that the Switch 2 crushed the sales of the PS5, which honestly isn't surprising. I mean, the PS5 had a ton of supply constraints when it first launched, so it's not really saying that much. But okay, if we can believe this, which again, I'm not saying we can or can't, I'm just saying this is some information that I was able to dig up. Remember, I'm not a journalist, I'm just a goofball on the internet, all right? I'm just doing my best over here, all right? But if we can believe this, then what we can assume is that, okay, the Switch 2 probably sold reasonably well in France, so maybe this is just the loss leader strategy that we originally proposed in my leak video. Maybe it's just the fact that maybe the margins on the Switch 2 weren't insane to begin with, but they are a high demand product, and so what retailers like E. Leclerc might consider doing is, okay, well, you know, this product is constantly in demand, but we don't really make that much money off of it, so why don't we just lower it as much as we possibly can just to get as many people in the door as possible? And maybe that builds rapport with Nintendo, by the way, right? Like, E. Leclerc can say, hey, look, this is how many sales we did compared to everyone else in the region, and it's because of our aggressive pricing strategy, and maybe they get allocated more units in the future. I have no idea. Again, this is all speculation, but I think it's a reasonable conclusion to reach that, you know, this deal pulls people into the store and then they go ahead and buy something else. Because if you guys didn't know, it seems like E. Leclerc sells a lot of different stuff. They sell like kitchenware, they sell coats, they sell tools, gardening things, stuff for your living room, maybe like toys and games and stuff like that. So I mean, yeah, they got makeup, right? A lot of these products, like especially makeup, are very high margin products, and so okay, if you draw them in with the Switch 2, you probably weren't going to make that much off of the Switch 2 anyway, so just lower the price, get them in the door, and then you sell them a coat that, you know, it costed you $2 to buy this coat and you sell it for 17. Maybe that's a decent margin, I don't know. But something else could be going on here. Let me go back to a theory that I mentioned earlier in the video with this Mario Kart World bundle that we could see on Idealo. Okay, now again, I don't live in France, I'm not really familiar with Idealo. It looks like it's an online store and a magazine, and they've got a bunch of different like games, toys, electronics, Halloween costumes. They also have deals on travel, so I have no idea what their actual business model looks like. But remember what I said earlier, Nintendo made it very clear when they first announced the Switch 2 that the Mario Kart World bundle was going to be a limited time thing. Okay, and here you can see actually on October 12th it was $428 for the Mario Kart World bundle, which is kind of insane. Okay, anyway, my point is, since this bundle is a limited time thing and we're over 4 months into the launch of the Switch 2 and they still have inventory of these basically limited launch consoles, maybe it's the case that they thought, Nintendo or maybe these retailers thought, that the Switch 2 would actually sell even better than it did. Right now, remember, it sold better than the PS5. Launch weekend was 169,000 units, but you know, launch weekend or launch week is all like the diehard fans. It could have fallen off a cliff after that, right? Demand could have collapsed because the price, as we saw in Europe, is just so high. Remember, it launched at $499, which is $583 US. Okay, so it could be the case that they had a successful launch, and then because the drop in demand, they just have all of these consoles that are sitting around, and they decide that, okay, well, we can use them as a loss leader, but also we want to move these units, because think about this, holiday is right around the corner. We are halfway through October already, and you can bet that Nintendo is probably shipping them more units. They may have already signed an agreement with Nintendo for a certain number of units throughout this first year, right? So they might already know that they've got more inventory coming in for holiday, and they still haven't gotten rid of the rest of their inventory that they started with, or that's been trickling in perhaps. So, and again, this is just a theory, right? And I know that you can still find the Mario Kart World bundle, I think, in the United States as well. I haven't really been checking my local stores lately, but I don't think this issue is exclusive to France is what I'm trying to say, but I do think that that is a plausible theory. But something else to consider, and this is something that I think you guys actually mentioned in my comment section of my video where I talked about this, there's actually been some backlash regarding the price of the Switch 2 in France. I mean, surprise, surprise, people were upset about the price in the United States. They'd also be upset about the price in Europe, right? In France, I know, like Sweden, some of these European countries, the price of the Switch 2 is really high, right? Like it is really high. Like this user right here says, F and shit, why did I pay 500 euros for that crap? So people already are having buyer's remorse spending full price on the Switch 2, and it's already got a permanent price reduction at least 4 retailers at this point. Who knows, it could be even more than that. Person says Nintendo doomed again, god damn it. This person says the console started out with a big bang in sales, but would not be surprised if it loses steam rapidly. This is the theory that I just went with just a moment ago, where I said that the launch week was big, and then after that they might have a ton of inventory. This user says, man, the numbers in Spain were so bad the French got scared and had to lower the price preemptively. This user says France is Nintendo land in Europe, and so I mean, look, if France is known to be a region that is heavily invested in Nintendo products and is typically brand loyal to Nintendo, and even they are lowering the prices of their units, I mean, what does that mean for the Switch 2? This user says, isn't France one of the stronger regions for Nintendo? Dropping price doesn't make sense assuming it's selling well, especially with the holiday season and big games like Pokemon coming soon. Okay, so if that's true, right, then maybe it's not selling well. Okay, I mean, I don't know, we could just draw that conclusion. This user says, in the Netherlands, at least the Mario Kart bundle got its price slashed in some places too. So again, I don't know, this person could be completely lying, right? I have no way to check if that's actually real, but it sounds like more price cuts are happening in other places as well. This person says, it's rare to see promotions so soon. Those Pokemon bundles should be selling so well they don't need a discount. That was also my thought exactly, right? It literally launched with a discount. That's kind of insane, right? The brand new Pokemon game on the Switch 2 had a bundle, and that bundle launched at a discount for some of these retailers. That's like kind of wild. So as you can see, the sentiment, at least from this forum thread, suggests that people are definitely price sensitive in France as well, and a lot of people can't believe that this would already be happening, with many speculating that, like, look, if it was selling well, they wouldn't do this, right? I mean, if it's selling well, you're not going to lower the price, right? Like if the logic is that it's a loss leader to get people in the store, well, okay, if it was selling well, they would already be coming in the store for it at any price, right? Does that make sense? So you wouldn't need to use it as a loss leader because it's already drawing people in. Like the goal of loss leaders is to get people in the store. You see what I'm saying, right? And so if the units were already selling really well, that would imply that people are already going to the store for that unit, therefore they wouldn't need to use it as a loss leader. Does that make sense? So even if you use the loss leader argument, it still suggests that the Switch 2 is not selling insanely well. Like maybe it's selling okay in France, but it's not like melting people's faces off. And what I find fascinating is what this analyst said about Nintendo's pricing strategy all the way back in May. This is crazy to look back on now that the Switch 2 has been out for a couple of months. Remember, this analyst released this statement and this prediction before the Switch 2 even came out. Let's go ahead and read what they had to say. And if you don't want me to read it to you, I'll link it in the description below. Just before you go, like the video, okay? But remember, we still have one more leak to talk about later in the video, but let's jump right in here. As it stands, the Switch 2 will cost you $450 for the standalone hardware or $500 for the hardware bundled with Mario Kart World. Nintendo usually keeps hardware pricing as is unless sales are really hurting, but one analyst thinks the big Nintendo will take a different approach with Switch 2. Pricing Studio CEO Yoshihiro Takahashi was asked about the Switch 2 pricing, and he believes Nintendo will slowly but surely drop the price of the platform in order to capture a larger audience. He thinks Nintendo is taking the approach of a premium price at launch because diehard fans will jump in at any cost, but Nintendo will eventually lower the price in order to reach more mass market consumers. Takahashi also stated that going with the current price scheme for Switch 2 gives off the vibe that this is a premium product when compared to the original Switch. This allows the company to maximize profits at the hardware's launch and then rejig the situation down the line. I don't even know what that word is. It's certainly an idea, but not necessarily one we've seen from Nintendo before. Will this analyst end up being right? Only time will tell. I mean, look, that's crazy. That is actually, I bet he, look, I know that these price reductions in France are probably not from Nintendo, right? It seems like it's competition between the retailers to move units, whether it's because they weren't selling or whether it's because they were doing okay, but they want to sell even more and they want more people to come into their store. Whatever the reason might be, it seems to be the case that it's the retailers doing and not Nintendo. But what this analyst predicted all the way back in May seems to already be coming true, and it might even turn out to be the case that the retailers are the ones that forced Nintendo's hand in this because, you know, I mean, look, it's starting in France. Everyone said, oh, it's just one retailer, and then now look, it's Amazon, now it's 3 other retailers, right? There's whispers of it lowering in Spain and Sweden, and who knows, maybe these price reductions are coming to more and more regions as we get into the holiday season, especially with Black Friday coming up. I can definitely see a world where these retailers are being hyper competitive with one another, and they're going to be the first ones to do a Switch 2 Black Friday deal. And then, I mean, who knows? So I actually think this analyst could be onto something here, right? And again, this is not really the strategy that we've seen, you know, Nintendo take before. I mean, we did see this with the 3DS, right? The 3DS launched at $249.99, then it was lowered to like $169.99 or $179.99, something like that. I don't remember exactly, but everyone kind of assumed that was because the 3DS was selling poorly at that price point, right? I mean, it's not exactly the same situation because the Switch 2 has sold well globally so far. Maybe some markets it hasn't sold exactly super well, but all in all, I mean, you check out the videos on the channel, I've covered this extensively. The Switch 2 objectively has sold pretty well so far. I mean, it's like breaking records, right? Especially in the US and in Japan, like it's doing well. So I don't think that they need to lower the price at this point, but what I do think that they will do is as time goes on, I mean, this analyst I think has a really good insight here. I think if they want to capture more and more market share, especially now that Xbox has kicked the bucket, like, okay, I mean, look, they still sell, they're still around. I'm being hyperbolic a little bit, but like, I think that the Switch 2 has a lot more wiggle room when it comes to the price in a downward direction than the PlayStation 5 and especially the PlayStation 6, right? Because we know the PS6 is probably going to come either end of 2026 or 2027, right? And the Switch 2 is still going to be, you know, well within its life cycle at that point. And so we're going to see the PS6 get announced at, you know, $800-900 or something insane, and Nintendo is going to be able to turn around and be like, oh, it's actually not $450 anymore for the Switch 2, it's actually $400, or oh, it's actually $379 for the Switch 2, surprise, right? And then boom, then they take over even more of the market because now they can lower their prices, right? So this, what we're seeing in France, might just be like a preview, just a little teaser of what's to come for the Switch 2 pricing in the future. And you know, this analyst, I think, kind of hit the nail right on the head, and this was from May of 2025, a couple of months ago, and a month before the Switch 2 even came out. So kudos to him. We'll see as the year goes on if this analyst ends up being right in the end. I'm sure he will feel very vindicated. But guys, let's move on to the last thing here. Remember what I said earlier about the leaker of this news actually leaking something else since then? Well, here we can see that they actually also leaked Assassin's Creed Shadows coming soon to Switch 2. The release date has been revealed. This was posted a couple of days ago, and they said, after several leaks and clues, we exclusively revealed the release date, physical format, and pre-order details for the Switch 2 version of Assassin's Creed Shadows. Since the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, fans of the Assassin's Creed franchise have been hoping for an adaptation of Assassin's Creed Shadows on the new hybrid console. Already available since March of 2025, several clues suggest an imminent arrival on Switch 2. It all started in April when the official website of PEGI, the European video game classification body, quietly added the Switch 2 mention to the Assassin's Creed Shadows listing. But the biggest leak came from the French retailer Auchan, which accidentally made the game's product page visible on October 10th along with a cover image. It also featured the mention of game keycard, indicating that a full game download will be required. And that is no surprise whatsoever. Not only is it a third-party game, not only is it Ubisoft, right, but also I'm pretty sure this game is bigger than 64 gigabytes. I could be wrong about that. You can let me know, but I'm almost positive. And also, if you guys remember, I made a video a few weeks ago talking about how some developers actually prefer game key cards because it allows the game to load faster off of the internal memory. And this is a fact, right? Everyone knows this, that the read speeds from the cartridge are actually slower than the read speeds from the internal memory. And so it's better to have the game downloaded onto your actual internal drive. And there's no way to do that from a physical cartridge. I mean, technically it would be possible, but Nintendo doesn't allow it. So maybe they will in the future, who knows? But that's another reason why this is a game key card. I don't think anyone should be surprised by that. But anyway, this leak goes on to say that the physical version is planned for December of 2025. According to our information, the physical version of Assassin's Creed Shadows for Switch 2 will be released in France on December 5th, 2025. All right, so if it's in France December 5th, it's probably in the rest of the world December 5th. A pre-order phase will also be planned beforehand. The exact launch date for pre-orders is still unknown, but should be announced by November 7th. Finally, the game should be offered at a price of around 50 euros, with promotional offers expected at certain retailers. What do you know? That's probably going to be the same thing like at Leclerc and like Amazon France and like everyone else that we've seen already, which means Assassin's Creed Shadows for Switch 2 in the United States should be a $60 game, right? Which would be pretty nice, or maybe even a $50 game. That would be pretty cool. I think that would make a lot of sense considering it is a game key card and considering it's a game that's already out, right? Like it's already on every other possible platform. So a lot of people already bought it. So they're probably not going to spend 70 on it, but maybe they'll spend 50 bucks on it. So that's good news at least. Now, of course, if this is true, this would be a pretty big addition to the Switch 2's third-party library. As you guys know, we have reported on the channel in the past that lots of people are saying that 2026 is the year of the third party for the Switch 2, and Assassin's Creed Shadows coming to the Switch 2 at the end of this year would be a pretty good place to kick the year of the third party off, especially because, I mean, look, the Metacritic review score is sitting at an 81. It's pretty good. I think it's a little bit higher than other Assassin's Creed games, at least the recent ones for sure. Obviously, the user score is much lower. If we hop over to OpenCritic, we can see that it has an 81 top critic average, 82% critics recommend, and 80 player rating. So all in all, I would say that if you're a fan of the Assassin's Creed franchise, this is probably a one that you might like. I personally haven't played it. I only played the very first Assassin's Creed and I got bored of that game. And I've heard from many people that lots of games after that were more of the same but in a different setting. I could be completely wrong about that, and in fact you guys can share with me in the comment section below what your thoughts are of the Assassin's Creed franchise. I know that Ubisoft's reputation has been horrible. Of course, we covered their whole end user license agreement thing where you're like required to break your discs if you don't agree with the EULA or something insane like that. But my point is, okay, that Assassin's Creed Shadows, for all of the controversies surrounding not only the game but also Ubisoft, it seems like it's a solid title, and I think that a lot of people who enjoyed Assassin's Creed Shadows wouldn't mind paying a little bit of money to maybe playing it on their portable console, right? I think that's completely reasonable. And so if we see Assassin's Creed Shadow come to the Switch 2 and it actually does perform well, I think that that's going to bode well for the third-party releases coming up for the Switch 2 in 2026. But but as we've already seen with game key cards and with the controversy around Assassin's Creed Shadows, it's also possible that this game might just quietly release and nobody cares. It just floats in the wind. Oh well, I didn't even realize it was on the console, right? So either way, I think it'll be really interesting to see how this game does sell, if it does actually come to the Switch too. But guys, if you made it to the end of this video, drop a thumbs up on it. It really helps out small channels like mine a ton. And over 90% of you guys are not subscribed. You might think you are, but you're actually not. Double check down below and comment down below your thoughts on the Switch 2 price drops that officially have occurred, and what does that mean for the future of the console. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.